Hi, welcome to Creative Soul Life. I'm Charlotte DeMolay. Welcome to episode 15, Planning for the Upcoming Year. This is the first episode of 2025, and I took a little break over the holidays. I hope everyone had a fun time, relaxing time, joy-filled time, peaceful time. Whatever it is you were wanting and needing during the holidays, I hope that's what you had. I enjoyed spending some time with my kids. We had Christmas early. We usually do. There's several of them in hospitality and first responders. So we rarely celebrate on Christmas. But we had a wonderful visit, and Christmas Day itself was actually very relaxing for my husband and I. And then he promptly got sick shortly after Christmas and spent that last week of the year on the couch. I was fine. I did my usual during that time period as a lot of introspection and planning for the upcoming year. You may have heard me mention it. I'm a type A, and I like to call myself a recovering type A. I'm trying. I really am. That was part of the move coming to Florida, was to kind of put life in a lower gear as my husband and I are preparing for retirement. And it flares up every now and then, my type A personality, but I really am trying to take things a little bit easier. So how does that fit in with planning for 2025? I've always loved planning and goal setting and making resolutions for the new year. That week between Christmas and New Year's was my favorite. I would grab notebooks and self-evaluations. I would look back over the previous year. What did I do and not do? Plan for the upcoming year. I love that time. And I've been doing this for years and years. Occasionally trying to drag my family into it. Sometimes they're willing participants. Sometimes they're just like, no, not this year. So how does trying to be a recovering type A, but still loving that planning and resolution making go together? And that's what I'm hoping to share today, because maybe you're not a type A. Maybe you're more relaxed type E or whatever. I'm not even sure what the other types are. But I know there are some that are not as intense and focused and have a little better handle on easing in and letting things happen. So I want to talk a bit about how I've done goal setting and planning and resolution making in the past, and how I'm going to do it a little differently this year. Now, I'm not saying how I did in the past was wrong, especially if you are a type A or even someone who likes setting goals for yourself. A lot of it has worked really well for me over the years. The first step I always do is that retrospection, looking back over the year. What worked, what didn't work? What did I hope I would do and I didn't do? What were goals that I had set that I achieved? What did I not make, and why not? What happened? This is very much needed to help going into the planning year. For example, always have a lot of health goals. I used to be a runner, and I've set a lot of running goals in the past. And my last, running, walking type goal was set the year I turned 50, in which I was trying to do like 500 miles before I turned 50, something like that. Well, I ended up hurting my knee that year, and so I didn't quite make that goal. But there was a reason behind it. I got injured. I couldn't. So going into the following year, I knew I also still had to adjust for that. I didn't want to risk getting injured again. So that helped shape that goal for the next year. So looking back does kind of help you look forward. One thing I always set goals for is books. I'm on Goodreads. Look me up on there if you like. Enter my name, or I think my username is Citra, which is artist spelled backwards. Anyway, on Goodreads, they have their reading challenge. If you're a Goodreads member, they have a challenge every year where you just set your goal, and then it tracks it for you as you finish books, either through something like I read on a Kindle, it'll upload it, or if you're reading actual physical books, you can scan it in or type it in, search for it, however, and it'll track your books read through the year. And I normally read a lot. I'm talking 50 plus books a year. Some years I hit over 100. Now, this isn't heavy reading. Those years that I hit goals like that, I'm reading a lot of chick lit, beachy reads, that type of thing. And this past year, I set a goal, I think, of about 70 books. I didn't hit it yet this year. And that was okay, because the reason I didn't was I scaled back on some of that reading. I also did reread some books and some series I had read before, and I don't count it when I do that. I don't count rereads. So that led into it I had been reading at night instead of watching TV with my husband, and we stumbled on some really good shows that we wanted to watch together. So instead of doing that nightly reading, I was watching Netflix binging with him. So it was okay. It was not a goal that I was upset that I missed. I think I hit 40 something this year instead of the 70, but I don't feel like that was something I failed at or anything. It was what it was. And because of the knowledge that I'm still watching shows with my husband and don't know, stopped rereading some of it. So by looking at that goal and why I didn't make it, that will help me set a goal for this upcoming year. I think I just set it today at maybe 50 books because I'm still not doing as much reading at night. I've also set kind of a challenge for myself. I'll talk about that later when I talk about current goals. Anyway, looking back helps you look forward for the planning in upcoming year. So take some time to do that. After you've taken a look at the past year and things that worked and didn't work, things you did and didn't do, it's time to start looking forward. So when I am planning for an upcoming year, first thing I do is take a look at that year and what do I have coming up? Do I have anything big going on? Like this past year, we knew we were going to move. We had kind of hit our limits with evacuating for hurricanes. We didn't know when we were going to move. We weren't in a hurry. It turned out being much earlier than we thought it was. But I knew that was upcoming in my year and when it was going to take a big chunk of my time when that happened. So I was kind of easy on myself last year and setting goals for 2024, knowing that was upcoming. In fact, that was one of my goals was to move, knowing that would be a big chunk of it. I also kind of break down things by the areas of my life. Like I may have certain goals for myself and then certain goals for my business. And then my personal goals, my own self goals, I'll usually break it down to health goals and then spiritual goals and personal enrichment goals. And then for my business, it just sort of depends on what I'm working on at the time. Like this year, I want to keep going with this creative soul life. I love this. I love talking and sharing. And I hope that somewhere I'm reaching at least one person out of this. So that's one of my goals this year. That falls under my business goal this year is creative soul life. So after I kind of break down the different areas that I want to set goals in, and I take a look and say, hey, what kind of things do I want to do? And in the past, I have set very specific goals. I want to run X number of miles or a certain race, or I have a certain number of books, like with Goodreads. I set specific goals like this. And I've also looked at things a little more openly, like for some of my personal enrichment goals, I'll think, what do I want to learn this year? Or even as business goals with art, what do I want to learn this year? Do I have a class I want to do? Is there something I want to focus on? This is a nice kind of goal to have when you're not the type or not in the place in your life that you want to measure and have specific things. You just want to try it. There was one year that it was my goal to try a new type of food, like cultural foods, ethnic foods. Once a month, I would explore a new type of food. And so the first month I did Italian. I picked that one because it was easy. I cook a lot of Italian for my husband, and my mom had just given me this beautiful book, Italian cookbook called The Silver Spoon. And I went through some things. I'd never made risotto before. So I went through the cookbook that first month, thoroughly enjoyed it. The next month I had picked Japanese. And I'd gotten some books from the library and looked at some different things, fell in love with one of the books, ended up buying it on Amazon. And I think I got stuck that year on Japanese because it was so good. There were several like ramen dishes and soups that I thoroughly enjoyed. And I started a new job. So that kind of halted some of the exploration. I did start back in a little bit. I think I did some Thai food and things like that. But, sometimes your goals are more vague. Like just explore this, learn that. And those are great, especially when you're wanting to live that more creative life. These vague goals of just trying something new or experimenting without any really end goal in mind. Just wanting to experience it, just wanting to have that newness in your life is a wonderful goal or resolution to have. Just wanting to have a new experience, I think, is one of the best resolutions that you can make. Other types of goals and resolutions I've set in the past were challenges. I would basically pick a challenge each month or quarter. One year, I challenged myself to make bread. Again, with me and my books, my grandmother had given me this beautiful book on baking bread. And so I read through the book. I tried a couple of the recipes, and I felt like that challenge was done when I baked a really good loaf of bread. And then that kind of freed me up to move to the next challenge. So sometimes just a challenge, and a challenge, it doesn't have to be learning or making. Maybe it's exploring somewhere. Maybe it's a challenge to find a new coffee shop or find a new place to do your walks. But challenge goals can help kind of move you out of your box, either in your daily routine or in your creative life. Another of my favorites, and I'm sure you've heard of this because this has been around at least a decade, is choosing a word of the year. And that word of the year helps kind of guide some of your intentions for the year, your frame of mind, something to focus on and concentrate on. I have been doing a word of the year, like I said, at least a decade. Last year's word was clarity. I had started a YouTube channel the year before. I put a few things up on it. It was mainly like art instruction videos and art demos, but it just didn't feel right. It didn't feel like that's what I was wanting to do, or my message I was wanting to do. So I picked the word clarity, did some kind of introspection again and some different things, and realized that Creative Soul Life is how I wanted to do my YouTube channel. And I've also, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcast, I've made it into a podcast as well. But having that intention last year of clarity and having the focus of that's exactly what I was trying to figure out. And it's very loose. I mean, just clarity, it is a very loosey-goosey thing. I wasn't even sure if it was clarity on the YouTube. I just wanted some clarity on some bigger picture items in my life. And if you believe in manifesting and things like that, sometimes just having that focus will help bring that into your life. I fully believe that by focusing on clarity. And the weird thing is I kept hearing that word everywhere. And okay, maybe because I knew it was my word of the year and my ears would pick up on it. But it seems like it was in podcasts I was listening to and books I was reading and email newsletters I was receiving. That word kept showing up again and again. And it made me feel like I was on the right track. So anyway, a word of the year is also a good intention to set for the upcoming year. I thought I had this year set, and I'm still kind of dabbling with that. And sometimes I've had 2 words of the year. I like the intention that a word of the year sets. One thing that's important to note is even though I set resolutions and goals every year, I have had resolutions as long as I can remember and goals, it never bothered me greatly when I didn't make them. And it was fun. And it was fun to look back over the previous year to see what I had accomplished. But I found a lot of times life got in the way. And honestly, I would forget about some of the goals. And I'd have that week of just deep introspection, that last week of the year. And then I would start off strong. And then somewhere after the first quarter, things would fall apart. So I did get better about tracking some of the goals. And I would set myself kind of like dates in my calendar. And I found quarter works really well for me. Set some intentions and resolutions, and then check in with myself on a monthly or quarterly basis to see how things are going. And sometimes it means that certain resolutions or goals just can't happen. Something's happened in life. You've maybe moved or something that happened in 2016. I had set some really good goals and I was on track for everything. And then my husband changed jobs and we moved halfway across the country. So goals blown. I mean, sometimes you just can't help life when it comes up. But if you're checking in periodically, you can catch that and say, okay, this is not going to happen. let's set some new goals that will carry me through the rest of the year, or set some new intentions or focuses. One thing I've learned though, and this is that type A coming out, is sometimes you can get really caught up in that tracking and monitoring. And it seems like something I'm really prone to do is I've had a smart watch, fitness watch for years, I guess more of a fitness than smartwatch. And I'll track everything: steps, heart rate, sleep, activity level, all kinds of things. I'll journal my food. I do all this kind of tracking and measuring, and things I'm even embarrassed to talk about that I track. But it sometimes doesn't have the desired effect. If you're tracking these things and what you're going for isn't happening, your goals aren't happening, the whatever change you're trying to make isn't happening, what you're trying to achieve isn't happening, it can have a negative effect on you. It can take away from those goals. It can start affecting how you feel about life. And I've found that's how I've been over this past year, all the measuring and counting and everything. It has gotten to be a little much. And trying to embrace this recovering type A, um, slower pace sort of lifestyle, my measuring and tracking was getting in the way of that. So, with that in mind, I have a very different approach for this upcoming year. I still have some goals and resolutions. I still did some planning. I actually did it a little earlier this year. Um, when I was in Texas, my oldest daughter, she's probably the most similar to me, and we like doing these planning sessions together. So one evening, the guys were in there playing video games, and we were at her dining room table and doing some planning and goal setting. And then after I got back, that last week of the year, we were on the phone and doing some things. And we've tracked these together before in Trello boards. We tracked them in Notion. This year, she said, let's keep it simple. We are doing it in Apple Notes. And we started one, and it has our year goals. And that was more of a brain dump. She decided this year she's taking everything 1 month at a time. That's her focus. She said she can't look at the whole year as a whole. She wants 1 month at a time. And I said, that's great. I said, I still need to know, what I'm working towards. That helps me guide my plan. So the year one ended up being kind of a brain dump for the both of us. They're less hard goals and just more of ideas, things we're working towards, things we'd like to do. And they're not hard and fast. They're not smart goals by any means, specific, measurable, all that kind of stuff. They're just some brainstorming. And then, like I said before, I like working in a quarterly basis. Um, when I work in a quarter, it helps guide my focus. It keeps me on track when things derail me. For example, hurricanes. That blew a couple of weeks of my year last year, cleaning up, preparing, cleaning up, and everything. And if I had set monthly goals and that happened, I'd feel very frustrated. But with quarterly goals, get that out of the way, look back, get back on track. So I like the quarterly goal approach. So then I opened a new note with quarterly goals, and I set some things that I wanted to work on for these first 3 months of the year. And then we opened a note for a weekly check-in. And that is where we're each going in each week, setting some goals for the week. And I have mine in some like checklist form, like 3 walks a week, that type of thing. And it gives us a little accountability. It gives us some ability to kind of cheer each other on and helps keep us focused. So that's how we've approached this year. That does seem like I am tracking and measuring. But let me tell you what I'm not tracking and measuring. I am not looking at the app that this watch is on. This is not an expensive watch. I think this is an Amazfit. I'm way too hard on watches. In fact, this one already has 2 cracks in it. With all the gardening and yard work I do, I'm not careful enough. So no Apple Watches for me. I can't afford to break something that expensive. So I go with less expensive watches. I haven't opened the app this year at all. So steps, any of that, I have no idea. I have some fitness goals and some walking goals for myself this year, but I'm not tracking it. I will track if I go for a walk, but when I go for a walk, I don't set the watch and say that I'm walking. I just kind of look at my watch as a rough time. I try and do about a 45-minute to an hour walk if I have time. If not, you know, I'll go for about a half an hour. But I'm going by how I feel on these walks, not trying to hit a certain number of miles, trying to hit a certain number of miles per minute in speed. Nope, I'm just going to go on a walk, see how I feel. If I feel like I need to speed up, I'll speed up. I'm trying to get back into a little bit of light jogging again. So I did that for several days. It felt good. Another day, it just hurt. And I'm like, okay, listening to your body. I will stop and just go back to walking. I am trying to be more mindful this year. I am trying to be more aware, more in the present, not looking back, not looking too much. What in the here and now, how are things going? With my eating, I am I have a gratitude journal that I'm doing right now, and it has gratitudes and kind of focus for the day, and it does have a space for food. So I am writing down what I eat. No points, no calories, no keto or avoiding this or avoiding that. I am trying to eat as clean as possible. I'm trying to listen to my body and eat when I'm hungry. Don't eat when I'm not hungry. I'm trying to listen to my body as to how much I should be eating. And if I eat too much and feel gross, you know how you feel, I'll make a note of that in my journal. But I'm trying to be very mindful, and I'm calling it mindful moderation. I'm trying to moderate what I'm eating in a very mindful way of feeling it, listening to my body, seeing how it feels, feeling the effect on me, and not tracking every little item. And if I hit a point and I'm not tracking the food, I'm okay with that. I want to be very much in the here and now this year. Oh, and my word of the year. I thought I had it. I had set it as nourish because I want this to be a year of sort of nourishing myself and the things I need. But then a friend of mine on Facebook asked for like a word or intention of the year. And what popped in my mind was presence, and being present for the people that are in my life, whether it be family or friends and connections I'm trying to make. I want to be present. So nourish, presence. I haven't quite decided yet. Maybe both. I've had more than one word of the year before, so maybe it's nourish and presence. But that's kind of setting my intention for the year. Now, as far as that brain dump on the year thing, do I have some things I'd like to do? Absolutely. The new thing I'm taking up this year, I'm trying to teach myself how to play the tin whistle or penny whistle. It's basically a little Irish flute. I had decided last year that I wanted to learn music. I don't know how to read music. Very artistic, not musically inclined. Some of my children are, and that's fantastic. But I took piano ages and ages ago, I think when I was in kindergarten or first grade or something. But as an adult now, at this point in my life, I don't know how to read music. I thought, well, that would be a neat thing to learn, kind of like doing your Sudoku or crosswords or something, get my brain firing, is teaching myself that. So I picked what seems to be a very simple instrument, very inexpensive, because this is kind of an experiment. We'll see how it goes. I started today, and my cat kept running up to me and looking at me like, are you okay, Mom? What is that noise coming out of your face? So we'll see. Needless to say, I'm not very good at it. But that is one of my goals for the year, is to try and learn the tin whistle. Another one is I have a lot of sewing projects that I have been dragging around from move to move, and I need to get these done. And I actually have my sewing set up in our guest room right now. I've gotten some of the projects done before the end of last year, and I'd like to finish up the rest of them before I put my sewing machine up. And then after that, I'll probably start in on scrapbooking. I've got tons of scrapbooking, but I would like to keep some of these craft goals going and creative goals. I'm a little bit up in the air art-wise. I'm not in my gallery anymore. That's over in Pinellas County. The drive was too much. And I have explored and explored all around me and just can't find. I love being in co-op galleries because everybody's working for the same goal and you get a lot of creative energy from the other artists, and there's not anywhere near me. So I might be leaning more heavily into online and going back to maybe some surface design and pattern design. I did some of that back in 2023. And then in 2024, I joined the gallery, and that kind of stopped, and I got back into more traditional painting. So we'll see. Haven't really set any goals like that art wise for this year because I'm still a little bit in flux with that. I, of course, have the goal with Creative Soul Life to keep going with this. And I'm playing around a little still on TikTok. We'll see if it lasts beyond the, halfway through this month when it may go away for everyone. But that's kind of something my older daughter is keeps encouraging me to do. She's got quite a few followers on there and thinks it's fun, and it is kind of fun. I have some health goals like walking and the mindful eating. That's about all I can remember at the moment. That's how hardcore I'm not this year. Is I don't have them firmly set in stone. Even the brain dump, I don't even remember completely what was on there. That was the point of it, just to get some things out that I'd like to try. And this year, instead of monitoring it and having schedules and lots of things, I am doing more of like focus blocks, and I'm calling these things my focus time. So during my schedule during the day, I have 3 time periods that are my focus times, and they run like an hour and a half to 2 hours long. And so I'm taking those focus times. Like if my focus is crafts, okay, this first quarter I'm wanting to work on my sewing, so I'll have a focus time. I've set it to crafts, and I'll go work on my sewing machine. Or if I have the focus time as media, I'll do some recording, do some editing, that type of thing. And of course, I have in there things like my garden, projects and stuff around the house, working on finances, that kind of thing. That's all comes part of that focus. And some of those aren't goals, or routine. I mean, I have, no goals with our finances other than, normal saving and things. But it is part of my routine to work on my finances every week and then, close out the month, that type of thing. So that's worked into my focus goals of finance, computer work, catching up, that kind of thing. So that's how I'm going into 2025, a little more loosey-goosey this year, a little more just kind of letting things flow. And it's already turned that way. On Sunday, I had set my focuses for the week. I don't think I've hit a single day, except yesterday was errand day, which I was going out of the house for anyway. So I did run my errands yesterday. That's the only day that has gone as planned. And that used to would drive me nuts. Now I'm okay with it. I'm going with the flow, get things done when I can, and truly trying to embrace a lower keyed, non type A lifestyle. And I think it's going to be a good year. So tell me how you're doing your planning this year. Do you have a word of the year? Do you have a focus? Do you have things that you're trying to do specifically? Or are you going for the more loose, I'd like to learn this, I'd like to increase this or not? How are you doing your planning for 2025? Have you done any resolutions? Are you taking the year as it comes? I'd love to know how you're doing it. So share with me, and go be creative and feed your soul. Thank you for watching or listening. And if you enjoyed this, please hit like or subscribe. And I can be found on other social media outlets like Instagram and TikTok. I have a website as well. I'd love to hear about your creative journey in life.